Evan Hale had never been one for parties. As a human diplomatic engineer stationed on the neutral trade world of Kalira, his days were filled with schedules, technical briefings, and endless translation reviews. Yet, when the invitation arrived, sealed with symbols he recognized as high honor in interstellar diplomacy, he couldn't refuse. A wedding, they said, a ceremony of unity among one of the galaxy's oldest matriarchal species. He thought it would be simple, a cultural experience, a story to bring back to Earth. That was before he realized that alien customs were far stranger than any human imagination could predict. The ship descended onto Kalira's central plateau, a smooth expanse of glittering crystalline soil. The ceremony hall was perched atop a jagged mountain of gleaming metal and stone, its curves elegant and alien, yet somehow welcoming. Evan stepped off the shuttle, feeling the chill of the high-altitude wind on his skin. The translators on his collar buzzed faintly, adjusting to the alien atmosphere. He could hear a low hum coming from the structure, vibrations that seemed almost alive. From the first moment he entered, he noticed the eyes on him. Hundreds of them, all fixed on him in quiet scrutiny. The crowd was made up almost entirely of women, their forms tall, elegant, and adorned in flowing robes of shifting colors. Their hair, long and luminous, floated slightly as though underwater, and their eyes shimmered with multiple hues. Evan tried to suppress his nervousness. In previous missions, humans had often been underwhelmingly ignored by alien gatherings. This attention was new and intense. A slender figure approached him, her voice musical yet commanding. "You honor us with your presence, human Evan Hale," she said. Evan bowed slightly, unsure of the proper etiquette. "It is an honor to be here," he replied, hoping the phrase was appropriate. His translator struggled, faltering and converting the nuances of alien respect, but the woman simply nodded. "You are the guest of honor," she said. "Please follow me to the Chamber of Binding." The phrase made Evan pause, Chamber of Binding. He laughed nervously, thinking of something ceremonial, a harmless tradition, perhaps like exchanging rings or gifts. He had no reason to suspect otherwise. The hall opened into a vast arena, the ceiling soaring high into the crystalline sky, its walls adorned with intricate patterns that pulsed with soft light. The alien women were arranged in groups, each representing a different clan. Symbols of authority and wisdom floated in holographic displays above them. At the center of the arena was a circular platform, marked with strange carvings that glowed faintly. Evan stepped forward cautiously, feeling a strange tingle on his skin as he approached. "You will accept the offerings of the clans?" the slender figure instructed. "It is the way." Instead, women from each clan approached, presenting him with small, glowing objects, each radiating warmth. One placed a delicate crystalline ornament in his hands, murmuring words that sounded like a song. Another pressed a soft, glowing sash against his chest. Each gesture was meant to bestow strength, wisdom, protection, and unity. Evan accepted them politely, though his mind raced. He had no idea what these gestures truly meant. He was guided to the center of the platform. The air thickened, charged with energy he could almost feel in his bones. A deep, resonant voice echoed through the hall, one he felt as much as heard. "You, human, accept these bonds." He gestured vaguely, thinking he was agreeing to continue the ceremony. The audience responded with what he interpreted as approval. The ceremony continued. With each moment, Evan felt more weight on his shoulders. He saw the women watching him, not with curiosity or desire, but with expectation. There was no malice, no hostility. Only focus, as though the future of their entire civilization rested on his reaction. Then something clicked. He remembered fragments of the briefings about this species. Their unions were not symbolic. The ceremonies were binding, legal, and could not be interrupted once begun. A sudden chill ran through him. He looked around, hoping for someone to explain, but all he saw were faces, calm, patient, unwavering. His heart pounded. He wanted to ask questions, to pause, but the translator remained faulty. The ceremony had a rhythm, a flow, and there was no stopping once one stepped onto the central platform. Moving backward would be rude, a violation of protocol, possibly interpreted as an insult or even a threat. Evan forced himself to breathe. If he remained calm, perhaps he could learn more before disaster struck. He studied the women as they continued the rituals. They did not approach with expectation of ownership or desire. They were offering elements of their lives, their clans, their power. And he had accepted them unknowingly. A sudden thought struck him. This was not just a ceremony. It was a political act, a union that involved every leading woman of their species. The realization made his head spin. He was not merely a guest, he was central to their law, their society, and their future. Panic rose in his chest, but he swallowed it down. Humans were known for their ability to adapt to survive. This was not the time to fail. He focused on observing, understanding, and remembering. Each step, each gesture had meaning. When a woman handed him a crystal orb, he did not just accept it, he studied its shape, its light, its resonance. When another draped a sash over his shoulders, he felt the symbolic weight. These were not tokens, they were bindings, tests, acknowledgments of responsibility. As the ceremony progressed, Evan realized something else. The women did not treat him as a subordinate. They treated him as an equal, someone who could bear the responsibility of their unity. The realization was humbling. Despite the fear and confusion, he felt a spark of pride. Humanity had survived impossible odds, fought wars, built alliances across stars. If these aliens saw that in him, perhaps there was hope yet. Hours passed in the alien perception of time. The ritual's cadence shifted, moving toward its climax. The central platform glowed brighter, symbols of power and unity orbiting in the air. Evan's body tingled with energy, a result of the alien bonding process he barely understood. The women chanted, not with voices but with vibrations, harmonics that resonated directly in the mind. He could feel their intent, unity, strength, future. When the final gesture came, a cluster of glowing crystals forming a crown-like shape above him, Evan realized he had completed the ceremony. He had unknowingly accepted the oaths of every leading woman of this species. His pulse raced. He had no idea what that meant in practical terms, but he could sense its weight. The audience bowed slightly, not to him as a human, but to the role he now held. The slender figure approached again. "The bonds are complete. You are now the central consort. You have accepted your place among us." This was not just a ceremony. This was a responsibility, a role that could shape an entire civilization. And they had chosen him. Later, alone in a small observation chamber, Evan allowed himself to breathe. The galaxy outside shimmered with distant lights, each star a reminder of humanity's place among the stars. He thought of Earth, of his friends and colleagues, and of the challenges yet to come. He did not know how he would navigate this unexpected destiny, but he knew one thing: humans survived, humans adapted, and humans endured. Whatever this alien species had in store for him, he would face it as a human, with all the resilience, curiosity, and determination that had carried his species across the void. And somehow, he knew that in the end, that might be exactly what the galaxy needed. Evan sat alone in the observation chamber, staring at the alien horizon. The crystal mountains shimmered with colors he had no names for, and the light seemed to bend oddly around the city below. He tried to collect his thoughts. What had just happened on the platform was unlike anything he had ever experienced. At first, he thought it was ceremonial symbolism, a respectful gesture of inclusion. But now, the truth began to surface in fragments. The realization hit him slowly, creeping like ice through his veins. He had not merely participated in a wedding. He had become something far more significant. He was now bound to every ruling woman of this alien species, their central consort, a role that apparently had not been filled for centuries. His mind raced. How could humans even begin to understand a responsibility like this? How could he navigate a society that expected him to carry the weight of thousands of years of tradition without even knowing its rules? And yet, beneath the fear, a spark of curiosity lit up. Humans survived impossible situations before. Perhaps, just perhaps, he could survive this one too. A soft chime sounded at the edge of the chamber. Evan turned to see one of the women, the slender figure who had guided him through the ceremony, enter. She moved with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly. Her eyes were calm, unreadable, but Evan could sense her attention. "You are awake," she said, her voice a melody of confidence. "Good. We were concerned for your well-being after the ceremony. It is taxing, even for someone of your strength. There is no human equivalent for what you have become. That is why you were chosen. Without you, our society would falter." This was a responsibility that involved entire clans, an entire civilization, and him at the center. "I don't even know how to begin," he admitted. "I'm just a human. I've never done anything like this before." "That is why you are worthy of the role." Over the next few hours, the woman explained some of the ceremony's significance. Each ritual item he had received represented a different aspect of leadership: wisdom, protection, endurance, and connection. Each was symbolic, yes, but also binding. By accepting them, he had agreed, unknowingly, to serve as the central figure in their society's governance, to mediate disputes, and to maintain balance among the clans. Evan listened intently, taking notes in his mind. Every human he had met knew that understanding came before action. If he could learn quickly, perhaps he could avoid catastrophic mistakes. When the initial explanations ended, she left him alone. Evan wandered to the balcony overlooking the city. The women below moved with fluidity and purpose, their attention occasionally flicking upward as though they could sense his presence even from afar. A strange mixture of fear and respect radiated from them, and Evan realized that his position carried more weight than he had imagined. The first challenge came sooner than he expected. A message arrived from the city's council, requesting an audience with all the clan leaders. Apparently, the bonds of the ceremony required immediate acknowledgement of his presence. Evan had no choice but to attend. The council chamber was even larger than the ceremonial arena, shaped like a spiral that rose into the sky. Each level held representatives from different clans. As Evan entered, he noticed that they all watched him closely. This was not curiosity. They were testing him, observing how he would respond under pressure. "Human Evan," said a voice from the upper spiral, commanding and clear. "You are now part of our governance. You will speak. What is your intention?" He had no intention prepared, but he remembered the lessons humans had taught for millennia: speak truthfully, act with respect, and prioritize survival and cooperation. "I intend," he said slowly, "to understand your needs, your laws, and your expectations. I will not take control. I will not impose. I want to ensure that all of your voices are heard, and that the bonds we share strengthen your society rather than threaten it." That perhaps was more human than anything else he could offer. The next few hours became a whirlwind of introductions, explanations, and observation. He learned about the hierarchy, the responsibilities of each clan, and the delicate balance of power. He saw where tensions existed, where historical grudges lingered, and where cooperation was fragile. He noted the subtle signals, the micro-expressions, the ways the women communicated without words. By the end of the day, Evan was exhausted. His mind was full of laws, rituals, alliances, and expectations, but he also had a new understanding. He was not merely a participant in this society. He was a stabilizing force, a bridge between the clans, and the unexpected representation of human adaptability and intelligence. That night, he returned to the observation chamber alone. He gazed at the stars stretching across the alien sky. The weight of his situation pressed on him, but he refused to let fear dominate. Humans had faced impossible odds, had survived in hostile environments, and had negotiated with countless alien civilizations. Perhaps, he thought, this was simply another challenge, another problem to solve. And yet he could not shake a growing sense of unease. There were forces in the galaxy that would see his role as a threat. Rival species might act, humans might be blamed for interference, and if he misstepped, countless lives, human and alien, could be at risk. The responsibility was staggering. Evan closed his eyes and remembered something his grandfather had once told him during their family history lessons. The measure of a human is not in what they take, but in what they endure, what they adapt to, and how they act when everything is uncertain. And he would act carefully, wisely, and with the best intentions of all involved in mind. Sleep was hard to find. When he finally rested, it was not with dreams, but with a mind whirring, analyzing every detail, every signal, every bond he had accepted. He could not unmake the ceremony, could not deny the obligations, and could not ignore the future that awaited him. The galaxy would soon know that humanity's resilience extended even into situations that no human had ever faced before. By morning, Evan had a plan. He would start small, learning each clan's needs individually. He would observe, listen, and respond with caution. He would rely on human ingenuity, empathy, and adaptability to navigate this alien civilization. And perhaps most importantly, he would remember that fear was a tool, not a chain. It could sharpen his focus, remind him of the stakes, but it would not dictate his actions. Humans had endured far worse, survived far stranger, and thrived in impossible conditions. Evan stepped onto the balcony once more, watching as the alien city below awakened. The women of the clans moved with purpose, some glancing toward him, acknowledging his presence. He nodded, a simple gesture of recognition. For now, that was enough. Understanding would come next. He was no longer merely a human observer. He was a participant, a stabilizer, and whether he liked it or not, a central figure in the destiny of a civilization. And for the first time, Evan felt a strange thrill. This was no ordinary diplomatic mission. This was an adventure, a test of humanity itself, and he intended to prove that humans could endure, adapt, and thrive, even in the most extraordinary circumstances. Evan Hale had spent the previous days learning, observing, and absorbing everything about the alien civilization he now belonged to. Yet no preparation could have readied him for the moment when it became undeniable. He was not just connected symbolically to the clans, not just a temporary participant in their rituals. He had, by law and by ritual, become married to every ruling woman of the species. It was not the kind of marriage humans understood. There was no domestic expectation, no romantic bond in the human sense. Instead, the marriage represented trust, alliance, and responsibility. Each woman had entrusted him with a part of her life, her authority, and her people. And now, the full weight of that trust rested squarely on his shoulders. He stood once more on the balcony of his quarters, looking out over the city. From this height, he could see the women moving throughout their daily routines. Each motion, each glance carried a subtle command. Their civilization was efficient, disciplined, and structured, yet it was the unspoken connections, the way the clans coordinated, the way each leader responded to another without words, that struck Evan most. The first meeting of all the clans took place in the central council chamber. This time the purpose was clear: to formally acknowledge Evan's new role, to see how he would respond, and to ensure that the bonds were fully integrated into the governance of the society. As he entered the spiral-shaped chamber, Evan felt every eye on him. The leaders were arranged according to rank, with the eldest and most respected women seated at the highest points. He noticed subtle signals in the way they held themselves, the tilt of a head, the positioning of hands, the flicker of the eyes. Every movement carried meaning, and Evan could not afford to misinterpret even the smallest gesture. "You understand now," said the eldest among them, her voice resonating through the chamber, "that your role is not ceremonial. You are central to our governance, the axis around which our unity revolves. Without your understanding, our society risks instability. I will not interfere unnecessarily, but I will act where it is needed to protect your society and its people." Here, in this moment, he realized that being underestimated could sometimes be an advantage. The council proceeded with the formal acknowledgement. Each woman approached, presenting symbolic items that represented their individual clans. Evan accepted each with care, mindful of the significance. He felt the flow of energy, the sense of connection intensifying as each bond was reinforced. By the end, he was not merely a participant. He was a linchpin, an essential component of a civilization he barely understood but was rapidly learning to navigate. Once the council adjourned, Evan took a quiet walk through the city. He observed the interactions between the clans, the way decisions were communicated through subtle signals, and how disputes were resolved without confrontation. He began to see the genius of their system. The bonds he now held were not about control, but about stability, about ensuring that no single clan could dominate unfairly. Humans were used to conflict resolution through debate, through negotiation. This species had evolved a system that relied on mutual awareness, respect, and oversight, with Evan as the balancing element. He realized that his role carried not just responsibility but opportunity. With the trust of all the clans, he could influence decisions, encourage cooperation, and help them avoid mistakes that could destabilize generations of society. It was overwhelming, yes, but also exhilarating. Humans thrived in adversity, and this was adversity on an interstellar scale. Later, he was approached by a group of younger leaders. They were curious, cautious, and clearly assessing his abilities. One stepped forward, a woman with hair that shimmered like liquid silver. "Human Evan," she said, "you now share our bond. What is your vision for the future?" "My vision," he said carefully, "is one of balance. I do not seek to dominate or change your traditions. I want to help maintain stability, strengthen communication between the clans, and ensure that all decisions respect the wisdom of the past while allowing for progress." One spoke quietly to the others, and Evan could sense their approval. Humans had a unique way of seeing problems differently, approaching solutions creatively. Perhaps that was why the elders had chosen him. The next weeks were a whirlwind. Evan participated in council meetings, observed rituals, and learned the nuances of the clans' interactions. Every day brought new challenges: a trade dispute between two clans, a ceremonial misunderstanding that could have escalated into offense, a subtle attempt at manipulation by a rival species observing the city from afar. Each situation required careful thought, patience, and quick adaptation. Through it all, Evan relied on what humans did best: logic, empathy, and endurance. He learned to interpret subtle gestures, to understand unspoken communication, and to anticipate the consequences of every decision. The alien women watched him closely, sometimes testing, sometimes guiding, but always observing how he balanced the immense responsibilities now entrusted to him. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day of council deliberations, Evan returned to his quarters and collapsed into a chair. He thought about the bonds, about the trust placed in him by every leader. Humans often measured achievement in tangible terms: buildings constructed, technologies developed, alliances formed. But here, achievement was measured differently: instability maintained, lives protected, and harmony preserved. He realized that his role was far more significant than any mission he had ever undertaken. He was not just a human in an alien society. He was a symbol of what humanity could offer the galaxy: resilience, intelligence, adaptability, and the capacity to unite where others could not. Sleep came fitfully. In dreams, he saw the faces of the alien women, each radiating trust, expectation, and hope. He dreamed of the city, the mountains, the flowing light of their rituals. He awoke with the realization that he had entered a partnership unlike any other, one that would define not just his future, but the future of an entire civilization. The following day brought new challenges. Rivals from neighboring worlds had caught wind of the ceremony. Rumors spread that a human had somehow been bound to an alien civilization, and speculation about human interference ran rampant. Some factions viewed him as a threat, a potential manipulator, while others were curious about the implications. Evan understood immediately that diplomacy would be as critical as observation. He requested a meeting with the council to discuss the external threat. "We must be careful," he said, "not to provoke conflict unnecessarily, but we also cannot ignore the potential dangers. We need a plan that protects your people while maintaining the bonds that now exist." Together, they developed strategies for defense, trade, and communication, using both traditional methods and new human approaches. Evan found that blending human creativity with alien structure created solutions no single species could have achieved alone. As the weeks passed, Evan began to see subtle changes within the society. Where rigidity had once dominated, there was now flexibility. Where suspicion had ruled, there was growing trust. The alien women began to discuss ideas with him openly, to seek his perspective, and to rely on his judgment. Not as a ruler imposing authority, but as a trusted partner, a human who had adapted to their way of life while bringing something new and valuable. Yet the responsibilities weighed heavily. Evan could not ignore the fact that rival species were watching, waiting for a misstep. Every decision mattered. One wrong move could spark conflict that might spread beyond this world, threatening humans and aliens alike. He had to remain vigilant, focused, and unyielding, all while maintaining the trust of those to whom he was now bound. Despite the pressure, Evan felt a strange sense of pride. Humans had endured worse than this. Humans had survived unimaginable odds, had traveled the stars, negotiated with countless civilizations, and adapted to environments no other species could. And now, in this alien society, he realized that humanity's greatest strength was not in weapons or technology, but in resilience, intelligence, and empathy. Evan began to formulate a long-term plan. He would continue learning every detail of the alien society, observing their customs, understanding their politics, and respecting their traditions. But he would also apply human insight where it was needed, encouraging cooperation, mitigating conflict, and fostering unity. He spent nights in the observation chamber, studying the stars and contemplating the vastness of the galaxy. This was not a challenge that could be solved in days or weeks. It would take months, perhaps years. Yet Evan felt ready. Humans survived impossible challenges not by surrendering to fear, but by confronting it head-on with courage, creativity, and endurance. By the end of the month, Evan had earned the respect of the alien women, the council, and even the citizens. He was no longer seen as an outsider, a guest, or an anomaly. He was recognized as a vital part of their society, a human who had endured, adapted, and earned his place among them. And deep inside, Evan knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy would continue to challenge him, rival species would continue to test him, and the responsibilities of his bond would grow ever more complex. But he had faced the first wave, survived, and thrived. He was no longer merely a human observer. He was a participant, a stabilizer, and a symbol of what humanity could achieve when confronted with the extraordinary. For the first time, Evan allowed himself a small smile. He did not know what the future held, but he knew one thing: humans endured, humans adapted, and humans thrived. Evan Hale stood in the council chamber, the alien city sprawling below him like a jewel in the night. Word of the ceremony had spread far beyond Kalira. Rumors were circulating in nearby systems, some praising the Union, others questioning humanity's role. Rival civilizations whispered that a human had somehow infiltrated an alien society, bound by law to its most powerful leaders. Evan understood immediately that the galaxy's attention meant danger. His position, once a quiet curiosity, was now a flashpoint for political tension. Every action, every word could be interpreted as a statement or a threat. And yet he could not let fear dictate his decisions. Humans had survived against impossible odds by thinking creatively, by adapting, and by taking responsibility when no one else would. The council convened early the next day. The elder women, leaders of the oldest clans, sat at the highest level. Below them, representatives of the younger clans shifted nervously, whispering to one another. Evan took his place at the central platform, fully aware that all eyes, even those from distant systems observing through reports and networks, were upon him. "You have brought our people into new light," the eldest said, her voice resonating through the chamber. "But your presence has drawn attention. Neighboring civilizations question our sovereignty and your influence. What do you propose? If rivals see that our decisions are deliberate and fair, they will have less reason to interfere." This was exactly that kind of situation. The first test came immediately. Messages from neighboring trade systems had arrived, reporting that some factions planned to exploit the ceremony's fame to gain political leverage. They claimed that the human consort was a threat to galactic balance, a puppet master who could manipulate Kalira's clans to serve human interests. Evan listened to the council's interpretations. He could see the worry in the women's eyes. Their society had never faced a challenge of this type, an external threat based not on weapons or force, but on perception. Evan realized that his role was not just to maintain internal harmony, but also to defend their reputation across the stars. He stood and addressed the council. "We will respond not with aggression, but with clarity. We will demonstrate unity and transparency. We will hold meetings, share information, and make decisions openly. Humans have survived by facing misunderstandings with reason rather than force. That is what we will do here." A plan was quickly drafted. Ambassadors from neighboring systems would be invited to observe deliberations, trade would continue under neutral supervision, and communication networks would be enhanced to provide clarity. Evan worked tirelessly, consulting with translators, advisors, and the women of the clans. Each step required careful balance, because any mistake could escalate into conflict. As the days passed, Evan proved his worth. He mediated disputes, advised on trade policies, and even suggested minor cultural adjustments to prevent misunderstandings. His human perspective, combined with the wisdom of the alien women, created solutions that were effective and elegant. Rival factions took note, some cautiously withdrawing their objections, others openly admiring the Union's stability. Yet not all threats were distant. One morning, a younger leader approached Evan with urgent news. A faction within the city, skeptical of human intentions, had staged a demonstration, claiming that his presence undermined the clan's authority. The situation could escalate into civil unrest if mishandled. Evan's mind raced. In human history, he recalled, leaders often succeeded not by responding with force, but by listening, understanding, and addressing the root cause of dissent. He immediately requested a private audience with the faction's representatives. "You fear that I will control your decisions," he began calmly. "I will not. I am here to support, to mediate, to protect. Your authority is unchanged. You remain leaders of your people. I am simply a partner, not a ruler." By the end of the meeting, they agreed to cooperate, and the potential unrest dissipated without violence. Evan felt a quiet satisfaction. Humans had survived countless challenges by using reason, empathy, and adaptability. Here, he had done the same, earning trust not through dominance, but through integrity. Word of his actions spread quickly through Kalira. The alien women, initially cautious, now began consulting Evan more frequently. They valued his perspective, not as a foreigner imposing change, but as a human whose insights complemented their traditions. Decisions that once might have taken weeks were now made more efficiently, with careful consideration of consequences and benefits alike. Yet Evan knew this was only part of the challenge. The galaxy beyond Kalira remained unpredictable. Rival species would continue to test the bonds, sending envoys, spies, and emissaries. Trade negotiations could be disrupted. Propaganda could twist the ceremony into a tale of human conquest. Each day required vigilance. He began developing strategies to maintain external relationships. Using human reasoning, he proposed transparency initiatives, open council meetings, neutral observation points for foreign representatives, and detailed explanations of decisions. By demonstrating fairness and stability, Evan aimed to prevent misinterpretations that could lead to conflict. Meanwhile, he also continued to strengthen his internal position. He observed each clan's needs, their concerns, and their ambitions. He offered suggestions when asked, mediated conflicts quietly, and always respected their customs. Over time, he became more than just a consort. He became a trusted advisor, a stabilizing force, and a symbol of human ingenuity. One evening, as he walked through the city gardens with a group of leaders, Evan reflected on how far he had come. Just weeks ago, he had been a visitor, unsure of the ceremony's meaning, unaware of his role. Now he had earned the respect of the elders, the trust of the younger leaders, and even cautious admiration from factions previously skeptical of human involvement. A silver-haired leader spoke, her eyes soft but intense. "Human Evan, you have changed our society in ways we did not expect. You bring balance, foresight, and calm reasoning. We trust you not because of force, but because of your actions and decisions." Humans often measured achievement in tangible terms, yet here he saw the true measure of accomplishment. Trust earned, conflicts avoided, and cooperation strengthened. This was the essence of human influence, not domination, but understanding and adaptation. The next challenge arrived with the arrival of a galactic envoy. Representatives from 3 neighboring civilizations came to observe and assess the situation. Evan met them with courtesy, humility, and clarity. He explained the bonds, the society's structure, and the purpose of his role. He answered questions honestly, emphasizing cooperation rather than control. The envoys were impressed. Some had expected arrogance, manipulation, or signs of coercion. Instead, they encountered a human who listened, adapted, and acted with integrity. Their reports to their governments reflected respect, not suspicion. Evan had succeeded in demonstrating that humans could be a stabilizing force in interstellar politics, even when thrust into roles far beyond their original understanding. Back in the council chamber, the alien women gathered to review the outcomes. They discussed new strategies, trade agreements, and cultural exchanges, now with confidence that the human consort could navigate complex decisions with wisdom and care. Evan listened, provided input when needed, and continued to learn. Each day was a lesson, each challenge a test of endurance, empathy, and intelligence. As the weeks turned into months, Evan noticed subtle but important changes in the society. Where there had once been suspicion or rigidity, there was now openness and flexibility. Decision-making became more collaborative, and trust grew between clans that had previously been wary of one another. Rival species began to respect Kalira's stability, recognizing that the bonds Evan held had strengthened rather than weakened the civilization. Evan allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. He had come to Kalira as a visitor, a human diplomat curious about alien customs. He had become a participant in a ceremony he barely understood. He had unknowingly taken on responsibilities that could have crushed him. Yet through careful observation, reasoning, and human resilience, he had navigated the challenges successfully. He realized that the essence of humanity's strength was not power or technology alone. It was endurance, empathy, intelligence, and the ability to adapt. That was why the alien women had chosen him, why the council trusted him, and why the galaxy had taken notice. Humans survived where others might falter, and they thrived when circumstances demanded creativity and courage. One night, standing on the balcony of his quarters, Evan gazed at the stars. Kalira stretched below, alive with movement and light. He thought of Earth, of his family and friends, and of the challenges he had faced here. The path ahead remained uncertain. Rivals still watched. Internal tensions could arise at any moment, but he was ready. Humans had survived far greater dangers. Humans had endured impossible odds. Humans had adapted to worlds they had never known, and in that knowledge Evan found confidence. The galaxy might test him, alien civilizations might doubt him, and the bonds he had accepted might strain under unforeseen pressures. But he would endure, he would adapt, he would thrive. For the first time, Evan truly understood the depth of the human spirit. It was not just survival, it was the ability to rise, to act wisely, and to guide others with courage and integrity. And now, in this alien society, humanity had a presence that would leave a lasting impact. The galaxy had seen a human caught in extraordinary circumstances. It had watched as he navigated political tension, internal conflict, and interstellar scrutiny. And through it all, Evan Hale had shown that humans were capable of much more than mere survival. They could unite, stabilize, and inspire civilizations, even when thrust into situations no human had ever faced before. Evan turned from the balcony, a quiet determination in his gaze. The challenges would continue, but so would his resolve. He was ready for the future. He was ready to prove once again that humans endured, humans adapted, and humans thrived. No matter the odds, Evan Hale knew the galaxy was watching. He could feel it in the hum of the council chamber, in the quiet tension of the city streets below, and in the coded messages arriving from neighboring systems. Rumors had settled, rival factions had paused, but the delicate balance was far from permanent. His role as the central consort to all the alien women of Kalira had proven both stabilizing and extraordinary, but now a larger decision awaited him. What he chose to do with his position would define not only his life, but the future of an entire civilization. The council summoned him early one morning. The elders spoke first, their expressions calm but expectant. "Human Evan, you have proven your wisdom, your patience, and your loyalty. The galaxy recognizes the stability you have brought. You have earned respect beyond our world. Yet a question remains. Will you remain bound to us, or will you dissolve the union as our laws allow?" The question weighed heavily. Humans often faced choices of consequence, but rarely on this scale. Dissolving the union would free him from responsibility, allow him to return to Earth as a hero, and remove the constant scrutiny from both Kalira and rival civilizations. Yet he understood the gravity of that action. Dissolving the bonds abruptly could destabilize the delicate harmony he had worked tirelessly to maintain. Clans that had begun to trust each other might fracture. Alliances could crumble. And he knew that the galaxy had already taken notice of the unity he had fostered. If he left, other species might interpret it as human interference gone awry. He remembered the first moments of the ceremony, the subtle energy of the ritual, the trust in the eyes of every leader who had offered him their bond. They had chosen him not out of coercion or manipulation, but because humans could endure, adapt, and act wisely under pressure. To leave now would betray not only their trust, but the very essence of what humans represented in the galaxy: resilience, integrity, and empathy. "I will not dissolve the Union," he said finally, his voice steady. "Not because I wish to control or dominate, but because my presence can continue to support your society. I will remain not as a ruler, not as a master, but as a partner. One who respects your authority, your wisdom, and your traditions. One who acts to maintain stability and harmony, not to impose my will." They had been waiting for a human to demonstrate exactly what Evan had just shown: the capacity to endure responsibility without arrogance, to lead without domination, and to act with integrity. Over the next weeks, Evan worked closely with the council to formalize a new system of governance. His human perspective complemented their traditions, creating a structure that emphasized collaboration, transparency, and mutual respect. Decisions that had once taken months could now be reached efficiently, without sacrificing the wisdom of the elders or the independence of individual clans. Even rival species began to notice the results. Envoys from neighboring systems arrived, not with suspicion but with curiosity. They observed Kalira's governance, saw the balance of power maintained without coercion, and recognized that the human consort was not a threat, but a stabilizing influence. In formal reports, they praised the system, noting that humans could bring unique strengths to interstellar diplomacy: reason, empathy, adaptability, and endurance. Evan realized something profound. Humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy was not weapons, not technology, but the ability to navigate uncertainty, to face responsibility without fear, and to act with integrity in situations no other species could manage. The alien women who had once viewed him as an outsider now consulted him openly. He was not a ruler or master. He was a human who had earned trust through consistent action, careful thought, and steadfast respect. Yet challenges remained. Internal tensions occasionally flared, particularly among younger leaders who questioned his continued presence. Some factions feared that a human, however wise, could one day prioritize Earth over Kalira. Others worried that external powers would attempt to manipulate him for their own advantage. Evan addressed these concerns directly. He met with each faction, listened to their fears, and proposed practical solutions to maintain autonomy while ensuring unity. He emphasized one principle above all: humans survive not by coercion or dominance, but by collaboration, understanding, and adaptation. If he could model those qualities, others would follow. Slowly, resistance turned to cautious trust, and trust grew into admiration. The galaxy, he realized, was beginning to see humanity as more than conquerors or traitors. They were problem solvers, stabilizers, and partners. As months passed, Evan became deeply integrated into Kalira's society. He attended ceremonies, oversaw critical decisions, and acted as a liaison between clans. Yet he never claimed authority for himself. Where humans might have imposed hierarchy or personal gain, Evan instead encouraged shared responsibility. He mediated disputes, suggested compromises, and fostered communication channels that allowed all voices to be heard. The alien women began to change subtly in response. They grew more collaborative, more open to ideas outside their traditions. The society that had once relied on strict rituals and rigid hierarchies now embraced flexibility and adaptability without losing respect for history or elders. Evan recognized that this was not control, it was influence earned through integrity. Humans had achieved the same in centuries past: survival through cleverness, empathy, and endurance rather than force. One day, news arrived of a potential conflict with a neighboring system. A misunderstanding over trade goods had escalated tensions, and some factions were threatening military action. Evan convened a meeting with the council. "We cannot allow conflict to escalate unnecessarily," he said. "We have an opportunity to show that our bonds, our unity, and our actions represent stability. We must act decisively, but without aggression." The alien council agreed, and representatives were sent to negotiate. Evan supervised the process, ensuring that no misunderstandings arose and that every party felt respected. Within days, the conflict was resolved peacefully. Evan felt a quiet satisfaction. Humans often solved problems through understanding and negotiation rather than force. Here he had demonstrated that even in an alien civilization, those same principles could prevent war, maintain stability, and inspire trust. Months later, Evan attended a ceremonial gathering celebrating the success of Kalira's new governance. The city was vibrant, alive with energy, light, and the movement of citizens. The alien women stood together, confident in their unity, and Evan was at their side, not above, not in control, but present, supporting, and guiding where necessary. As he observed the celebrations, Evan reflected on the journey. He had come to Kalira as a visitor, a human diplomat curious about alien traditions. He had been unknowingly bound to the most powerful leaders of a civilization, a responsibility that could have crushed him. Yet through careful observation, adaptability, and human resilience, he had navigated every challenge. He had earned trust, stabilized society, and even influenced the galaxy's perception of humanity. For the first time, Evan felt the full weight and full honor of his position. He was not just a human. He was a symbol of what humans could achieve when faced with the extraordinary: endurance, intelligence, and the ability to unite disparate groups for a common good. Later that night, standing alone on the balcony, Evan gazed at the stars. Kalira stretched below, alive with movement and life. He thought of Earth, of his family and friends, and of all the challenges that had led him here. The path ahead remained uncertain. The galaxy was vast, full of unknowns. Rival species could act, new conflicts could emerge, and the responsibilities of his bond would never disappear. Yet he felt ready. Humans had survived impossible situations for millennia. They had endured hostile environments, negotiated across cultural divides, and overcome challenges that other species considered insurmountable. And now, in Kalira, he had applied the same principles on a scale unlike any other. Evan turned back toward the council chamber, toward the women who had entrusted him with their society, and toward the city that had come to rely on his guidance. His decision was clear. He would remain. He would continue to serve, not as a ruler, not as a master, but as a human partner, a stabilizing force, and an example of what his species could achieve. He realized then that the true victory of humanity was not in conquest or technology, but in integrity, resilience, and the courage to act wisely when faced with overwhelming responsibility. In this alien society, he had proven that humans could endure, adapt, and thrive, not alone, but in partnership with others, earning trust and respect through action rather than domination. The city glowed below, and Evan felt a surge of determination. The galaxy might challenge him, alien civilizations might test his role, and the bonds he held could be strained by unforeseen events. Yet he knew with absolute certainty that humanity's greatest strength was enduring in the face of the impossible, acting with intelligence, and building bridges where none existed before. And so, as the stars shone over Kalira, Evan Hale took his place, not as a ruler, not as a master, but as a human who had proven that humans endure, humans adapt, and humans thrive. His presence had stabilized a civilization, inspired trust across systems, and reshaped the way the galaxy viewed humanity. The ceremony, the bonds, the challenges, they were not just trials. They were a testament to the human spirit, a reminder that even in the most extraordinary circumstances, one human could make a difference, and in doing so, elevate an entire civilization toward a better future. Evan smiled quietly, feeling the weight of responsibility balanced with the honor of opportunity. The galaxy was vast, and the journey far from over. But for now, he had proven what humanity could achieve, not through domination, but through resilience, integrity, and the courage to face the extraordinary with intelligence and heart. And that was enough.